Okay, so I just got back from seeing The Batman. Thank you so much for the early screening. I always want to give a big thank you to that. And I guess I should say first what I was thinking when I saw the trailer for it. My big fear was that this was going to be another Nolan Batman, which is fine. I like Christopher Nolan's Batman, but we got it. Christopher Nolan gave it to us, and I really wanted something a little different and a little new. And this gave it to me. I really liked this movie. This, throughout maybe 3/4 of the movie, I'm like, this is a 4-star movie. Like, I am loving the hell out of this. It's a film that, to put some fears to rest, it doesn't show the parents getting killed again. You don't need to know the backstory of every single character. It's assuming you know the story already. And the point in time, it seems like to me, is that it's taking place still kind of in the early days of Batman. It's funny that it's called The Batman, because I think there was a cartoon show called The Batman, which was about him younger and in the early days, so I think that's fitting. And Pattinson plays him very well, in my opinion. I actually really like that all the Twilight actors, the main actors, have moved on and had good, successful careers with good performances. Like, some of them took a while. Pattinson, I think, is one kind of took a while, and Stewart took a little while, but they all got good performances, and I think he's legit really good here. He's got the voice down, he's really got the attitude down, and what I like about this version that I feel like we were getting away with Nolan, and to some extent Snyder, this feels like a dude who would dress like a bat, who, you see him, he walks around, he almost kind of looks like a bat, like he stays, you know, hidden away in his mansion, he only comes out once in a while. I mean, you know the dude, he's like pale white, whiter than me, ridiculously white, and he only comes out every once in a while, people are like, oh, that's Bruce Wayne, oh my god, like, you never see him, so you buy it, and it's one of those things where when you see him walking around, you see him talking, you see him doing the bat voice, which is very smartly just a whisper. I think there's only 1 or 2 moments when he screams, and when he screams, it's just his normal voice. I think there's like one moment where he tried to do that, what's going on here? You know, like where it sounded kind of silly, but I mean, like, you bought it fine. I bought it fine, at least. The whole feel of it, when I was talking about, I was afraid it was going to be like the Christopher Nolan movies, you know, I didn't want to repeat of that because we already got that. It's very much like a pulp detective comic slash kinda horror comic, and Batman does have some roots in that. You know, it came from Detective Comics, and a lot of people are saying, well, it's a detective story, and that is true, but it should be it is not a mystery. And what I mean by that is a detective story is someone trying to solve a crime, trying to figure out what's going on. A mystery, you're trying to figure it out as well, and that's not how this works. I really thought maybe, like, the big mystery was going to be, who's the Riddler? You know, who's the, here's your suspects, now let's see who the Riddler is. But it's not. It's figuring out why is the Riddler doing all this, and why have certain people been murdered or disappearing, who are other people's connections to them and such. So keep that in mind if you're thinking like, man, it'll be nice to have a good mystery. It's really not that, because it's not something you can solve. It's something where they're just figuring it out. There's no clues given to you. They're only given to the main characters, and when you get to the end, it's one of those things where I'll get to the end in a bit. The end is one of, like, the few things I have a little bit of an issue with, but with the layout and everything, this is a movie where it has, man, maybe my second favorite Gotham City in it. I really like the original Batman movie, Gotham City, and this one's pretty close. Just when you see the Times Square, which it's like these gothic buildings, but then just these signs cluttered together, and all the buildings are kind of squished, kind of like St. Canard and Darkwing Duck. I always love the layout of that too. I really think they got something really good. It has a lot of atmosphere. The filmmaking in this also has kind of a Kubrick feel to it, where a lot of shots kind of take a while, and the music is a little different, and the music's almost like a little bit of a drone. Everything really takes its time, and it's drawn out. It'll really hold on shots for a while, but it's done in a very masterful way, a way that really It establishes atmosphere, it establishes the brooding of the character, it lets things really sink in. You just feel this place, and you feel, you know, the dilemmas and choices that the characters are making, and all of that is really wonderful. I'm trying to think what else before I talk about stuff maybe I don't like. The theme is really great too. Again, when I saw the trailer, I'm like, well, that doesn't sound like my blom, 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 blom. Oh, come on, you're just another Inception clone, whatever. But when you see it in the movie, and you see him, the way the atmosphere is, and you see him come out of the shadows, and you hear that music, there's just this sense of, oh shit, someone's in trouble. This is actually one of the few, maybe since Dark Knight, this is probably the first Batman movie where I've said, oh shit, when something happens, like when a character dies or they discover something or someone else might be connected to someone else, I legit had moments where I'm like, oh no, in it, which is really, really great. All the performers are great. The a Catwoman is a lot of fun in it. And she has an interesting backstory, and there's a lot of the movie where she's working with Batman, which is nice. A lot of times she's working against him, and she does flip-flop, so I like there's a lot of her working with him, but they still have kind of different ideologies here, too. Alfred's pretty cool, and I love there's one scene, again, minor complaint, Wayne maybe treats him a little too bad sometimes, which is always part of the joke, and again, he's younger, so you kind of get it, and they have talks of, you know, you're not my father and stuff like that, but Alfred always has some words of wisdom to combat it. And there's one scene, though, it's in a hospital, where Wayne says something to him, and Alfred shoots him a look while saying something where it's like, oh, this dude killed somebody. This is like an Alfred where whenever you see Alfred and I love Alfred, I don't think I've ever seen like a bad Alfred in anything, but there's some where it's like, oh yeah, he was like a spy or something. He has this really interesting backstory where he was like, you know, maybe even a killer and stuff like that. And a lot of them I didn't buy it, but this one I buy, because he gives a look like, I will fucking break you, pretty much. So he's great. I know there's a lot of talk about Farrell as the Penguin in this, and then there's talk, oh, he's barely even in it. He's not barely in it, but he's definitely not a main villain. And he's having the time of his life. He is everything you want him to be in this. He's like a mix of Pacino and De Niro. It's having a lot of fun. The Riddler is very good, but maybe this will tie into the one or two things I have an issue with. And most of them are nitpicks. I really, really like this movie. But one nitpick I have, I don't like any of the masks at all. Like, at all. And the Riddler's might do the biggest disservice because it covers everything. And I guess just to be safe, I won't say who plays the Riddler. I think you can look him up. I think most people know. But just in case, I won't give it away because you see later in the movie, they reveal it. And this is a guy who should have been doing this performance showing his face. If you want to cover him up, just cover the eyes or something like that. And there is kind of a reason they cover the whole face. They do something at the end, but it's not really that needed. And his Riddler wasn't really working for me when he was talking. It didn't sound right. You know, when he would act a little bit more crazy or when he would act calm, or sometimes he'd manipulate the voice, sometimes he wouldn't. But when you see him in person, like, suddenly I'm like, okay, this is a creepy Riddler. This is a good, absolutely, you know, nutball Riddler, but he's also kind of funny. Again, I think the Batman villain should be a little funny. And it's a shame because I really feel like this performance, this could be like one of the great funny and creepy performances if they just let him show his face, but they don't until the very end. I think that really did a disservice to that performance. The Catwoman mask is ridiculously cheap and lame, which I'm sure is the idea. Like, oh, well, she doesn't want to really be a cat, so she just puts on this little mask, you know, like whatever, a winter hat that she pulls over her face. It just happens to stick out like a cat. When you see what she does for a living in this, there is no reason she couldn't wear like a Michelle Pfeiffer style Catwoman hat mask at all. Like, at all. It would make way too much sense. It's one of the few times where it would make perfect sense for her to wear a Catwoman mask, and she doesn't do it. It's kind of infuriating, but the rest of the costume looks great. You know, she grows her nails long and she keeps them like claws. That's great. I mean, that's a great day. She has cats. She even says, you know, the bat and the cat has a nice ring to it. And so it's like, okay, she's embracing this identity. Why couldn't you give the Catwoman mask in there? And then the Batman mask I don't like either. I get it a little bit more now that I've seen the whole thing. And it does make sense because there is a lot more. He's in the costume a lot. And I like that. Before I said, well, Batman shouldn't be in the film the majority of the time, it should be Bruce Wayne. But this is the first one where I'm like, no, this makes sense. With the world they create and this sort of dark, grimy pulp detective comic style they're going for. He even has like a voiceover narration. There's one point where he says, I am the Shadow. You know, like the old radio series and the comic series and stuff like that. I'm just like, well, you can't get more obvious than that. When you see the mask that goes with it, it does make a little bit more sense because it's maybe the most mobile Batman suit and Batman mask. And, you know, like, the one advantage it has is that you can see more of the performance, where I think a lot of the other Batman masks, it maybe hides a little too much, where with this one, it's like, okay, I'm focusing a lot on the performance, which is good. The mask is not so bad that it's distracting, where I think the Riddler one was, and to some extent the Catwoman one was. So it's not the worst, but I just don't like the way it looks. I just, a lot of the Batman masks and suits, weirdly, I don't like, but the clothes are really good. The Catwoman outfit is great. Batman's outfit is great. Again, it looks like it's armor, but you can move around in it at the same time, where that's always kind of the fun with the Batman, you know, movies, is that he always wears stuff that you couldn't really move around much in. But I love, too, I'm glad they finally got the idea that, you know, every time in a movie he wears black makeup around his eyes so it blends in with the mask, and then every time he takes it off, just the makeup's gone. Okay, part of the fun. I get comic book movies, but it looks so good when he leaves it on. You see it in the trailers. He'll take it off and his hair's messed up and you just see the black shit on his eyes, and sometimes he has to get out of the costume real fast. Again, it's another thing. I believe he can get out of this costume very quickly. He can take off the mask very quickly, and just the makeup's still on, and he'll use it to like just kind of look like, you know, a bum on the street or something, and just like his face is all kind of like, you know, in the shadows and with the hood and stuff like that. So all of that really, really makes sense. So with that said, the running time, because a lot of people are talking about the running time. I did not feel the running time in this movie until the climax. And the climax is the only thing I've kind of an issue with, where I might have just given this 4 stars, and now I'm like somewhere in between 3.5 and 3. The climax is not bad. It's not something where I watch and I say, oh, this isn't working, this is terrible, or anything like that. But I feel like it goes very Dark Knight Rises at the end, where they're suddenly like, oh, we need something big. It can't just be a detective story. Something big and major has to happen, and it has to be about something important. Well, we have to really get the commentary in there. We have to have people leaving with a message and so forth, where the great thing about Batman is I feel like the themes and ideas stick with you because the characters are so good, and all of that is being balanced really well throughout this movie, that when you do get to the end, it is a little distracting because it feels like it's kind of a style change. And there are things with the message and the climax and everything that are done well. There's a really good scene, without giving away too much, where somebody quotes what Batman said earlier, and I'm just like, wow, man. First of all, that should have been in the middle of the movie. Like, I wanted to think about that throughout most of the movie. But then second, I'm like, okay, man, that's a good scene. Just let that sit. But then the narration at the end comes in, and he explains what that means and why it's important and why everything else. And it's just like, no, you didn't need that. You don't need that. There's something about when they figured out that, you know, characters like Batman and Superman are so representative of what our culture values and we see as heroes, that they feel like they have to hammer in this commentary. And there's nothing wrong with commentary. I mean, there's so much commentary in superheroes. But when it's feeling a little too much like, okay, audience, we're telling you this, it's not as much fun. And this is by no means no means at all the worst I've seen of this. I mean, God, especially recently, I feel like there's so many movies that have just commentaries that hit you over the head, and the commentary leads the story and characters, not the characters and story lead the commentary kind of thing. So it's not that bad, but it's also the only part where I started to feel the length, and I'm like, this should be wrapping up here. Come on, come on. And it does. When it gets to the big climax, and you'll know the big climax when you get to it. It is wrapping up, so if you're just like, oh, dude, how long is this? It's getting close to the end, so don't worry about that. But, man, like I said, through 3/4 of this movie, I was not feeling the length at all because of how stylized it was, because it was done a little bit more like a horror film and a very old-school, dark detective film as well. There are scenes in this movie where it'll just... I love in the opening, it'll show kind of criminals, you know, doing stuff and everything. And then it'll just focus on like a corner, like a dark corner in the background. And you're kind of looking like, well, is he there? Is Batman there? And that's kind of the idea. You don't know if he's there or not. And then sometimes, like, he will step out of the shadows, and sometimes nobody's there. But you're constantly just feeling like, is somebody there? Is somebody not? The reveal of the Riddler, the first reveal they have, is legitimately creepy. And there's a lot of moments with the Riddler's deaths to other people that he causes that are really unsettling, and they're done really masterfully. There's a really great one, again, without going into too much detail, where it goes, I think it's focusing on like a wheel or something like that, like a driving wheel, and it goes out of focus, and you see him doing something to this guy. You have no idea what it is, but it's flashing. And you're just watching like, what the hell is this guy doing? It's so uncomfortable, and it's so great. So I think the only other issue I had, I love the song Ave Maria, but this movie might have ruined it for me. For whatever reason, like, the Riddler's theme is Ave Maria, and it's really weird, and they play it all the time. I mean, like, it's a beautiful song, like, it closes the end of Fantasia, it's one of the best Disney endings. My mom used to sing it all the time, but by the time this is done, I'm just like, I am sick to death of this song. I hope I never hear this again. So those are nitpicks, though. I think the ending is the only part I had kind of a major problem with, but it didn't ruin anything for me. And if you were to ask me maybe 2 years ago what I thought the typical moviegoer would think of this, I'd say, well, I liked it, but I don't know what fans will think of it. And not even fans, just like movie-going fans. Because there is a lot of, you know, just kind of figuring out crimes and discussing stuff, and, you know, and just letting scenes play and let the atmosphere really sink in, let the music just build up everything around you and stuff. And I love movies like that, but that's not usually like a typical movie-going audience, you know, just looking to see a superhero that wants to beat up stuff. But with movies like Dune and even The Eternals, which I didn't like, but a lot of people were patient for it. They were just like, yeah, no, I thought it was okay. I thought the conversations were interesting and stuff like that. I think people are gonna like this movie. If I had to guess, I could be wrong. I think a lot of diehard Batman fans are probably really gonna enjoy it. If you're saying, well, where does it lie? Is it like Burton? Is it like Nolan? Is it like Snyder? I say it's kind of in between Burton and Nolan. It's more realistic than Burton, but it's definitely very comic booky and stylized like Burton. It's not afraid to still be a comic book movie. And I really, really love that. I love the style in it. I was very happy it wasn't just a Nolan knockoff. I am glad it's its own thing. All the performances work, in my opinion. The only issue I have is a little bit of the ending, and for all I know, maybe you'll see it and you'll be like, oh my god, the ending was the best part. I love the climax. I love the way everything ties together. But I was really engaged in it. I was really sucked into, you know, the detective element. I was sucked into the characters, and maybe that's why it didn't feel long, because every time it cut to a different character, there was nobody where I was like, oh, this boring person. They're all interesting. And I didn't think I was gonna like this idea that there's a bunch of different Batman characters in this, because that's another complaint sometimes I have. They try to squeeze too many Batman characters in, and they're all such good characters. Any one of them could have their own movie. Instead, they throw like 3 or 4 in. This one, it makes sense because he's already Batman. He's traveling through the city. You already kind of know these characters. You're just seeing like a new interpretation of them. And it's an interesting interpretation that I'd love to see more of. So I really, really liked it. When you see this movie, please let me know what you think of it as well. My assumption would be that a lot of people are gonna like it. If they're getting into Dune, if they're getting into Eternals, this is kind of in the same vein where it takes its time, but you really feel like you're there, and you don't feel the length for the most part, like I said, and not until the end. But I thought everyone was so interesting. The city was interesting. The mystery was interesting. I didn't always know where it was gonna go, and that excited me. I loved the atmosphere in it. I really, really recommend it. I think especially if you're a Batman fan or you like those old comics where, you know, with the extreme angles and everything's dirty and they're solving a mystery, you know, over this dead body and they're just looking over it, acting, you know, really gruff with the heavy shadows and stuff. I mean, this is the film for you, man. It was definitely the one for me. I really, really enjoyed it. But what did you think? Well, once you go see it, let me know what you think. Did you like it? Did you not like it? How's it compared to other Batman movies? Is there anything you especially loved in or anything you especially hated in it? I'd love to know your thoughts on it, man. So that's about it. I'll see you next time. Take care.